Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and I used to be an airline pilot. In this video we're gonna discuss the preliminary report of the accident, or it's better to say a war crime, which the Russian air defense committed against a civilian airplane of Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer ERJ-190. This initial report is made by Kazakhstan because the airplane crash-landed not far away from Aktau Airport of Kazakhstan. The report is made in Russian since Russian is one of the official languages of ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. The report goes for many of the pages compared to the recent report of the Jeju Air Boeing 737 accident. This one is more full. Well, basically because we have the data from so-called black boxes. And here you can see many of the flight parameters of the airplane, like for example roll angle, pitch angle, airspeed, and you don't need to be a very professional to define two of the parts of this graph. A normal flight where the systems were working fine, and this crazy flight with loss of the flight control. Then Russian missiles hit the airplane. Yes, there were two of the missiles. Yeah, even though in the report, for the political reason, I guess, Kazakhstan side do not specify that it was a missile, but based on this analysis, it's like 2 + 2 = 4. And here in the report we may find the air traffic control communication with the crew. Luckily for us, the part of the communication was in English, so I don't need to translate it for you. Letter A means equipage, so the crew, so then you see this, it means crew, and then Rostov control with the frequency, then crew, and then Grozny tower. RE means the warning from the airplane, you can see it here. So let's go step by step to see the full picture. So at 0426 or 0425, crew reported that they are ready for descent, and for your information we lost both GPS. The crew requested Repka 1 Victor arrival. It's the standard arrival scheme for the airport, runway 26. But Rostov control reported for them to expect Repka 1 X-ray. It's a usual thing, then ATC tells you what kind of the scheme exactly you need to proceed. So 1 X-ray, 1 Victor, you just perform some minor actions with flight control computer to change your star. But here again, both of the GPS were lost. Usually it's not critical because the airplane itself has the inertial reference system, which consists of at least 2 of the inertial reference units, basically gyroscopes, and they're basically used to define the position of the aircraft relative to the ground. But those IRS units, or IRS system, they need to receive the update from GPS usually, or from DME. It's the special navigation tool which shows you the distance located on the ground, but in this particular case, the DME update wasn't working properly or wasn't working at all. It means that the precision for the airplane to determine its location was low, and there could be even error accumulated if the flight is kind of long with no updates. And we have the confirmation that crew requested NDB approach, and they reported that they've lost again 2 of the GPS. Azerbaijan Grozny Tower, good morning, identified, expect NDB Victor approach runway 26 via Remka 1 X-ray descent to height of 1100 meters, QFE 1005 hectopascals. Yes, in Russia, below transition level, they still fly using meters and QFE. I wouldn't say it's good for the Western-made aircraft, but they do it. And exactly at the same time, the airplane gave the warning terrain, pull up. I would say that it's the very urgent condition, then the crew should perform the special terrain avoidance maneuver. On every airplane the maneuver could be different, but the usual idea is to increase the thrust gradually and avoid the terrain pitching up. But in their case, the airplane might think that it's flying somewhere in the mountainous terrain area, because again there could be an error in navigation system in this case. Here they do not specify if the crew performed the terrain avoidance maneuver, nor they didn't tell that the crew was aware of the false command by the airplane. So for now we don't know whether they really encountered the terrain or it was a fake alert. Then the aircrew requested the vectoring for the NDB approach. There was the question, will you vector us for NDB approach? And Grozny Tower say that vectoring for NDB approach runway 26, continue present heading till advice. Azerbaijan 824, azimuth 071, distance 18 kilometers. Turn right heading 250, cleared NDB Victor approach, runway 26. And just 1 second later, there is the terrain pull-up warning again, recorded on cockpit voice recorder. Then the crew requested the distance from NDB for them to check it out because the location of the airplane was really unknown. And with all of those warnings happening, the crew should be absolutely sure that they're at the proper location. So they thought that air traffic controller has more information. Then the Grozny tower reported that they are 14 kilometers away from NDB. Well guys, the NDB approach, like the standard NDB approach, then you use just arrows, is kind of difficult for every pilot. Well, if you have the GPS update, you can cross-check it with your track so you monitor needles, but you continue with GPS track. But without it, it's like a Second World War bomber when you have just needles and you have to correct your altitude, heading. You need also to count the time, vertical speed, your ground speed, all of the parameters. And the weather that time for this NDB approach was marginal, but the tower was monitoring the airplane and they called them they are approaching the glide path, the wind is calm, runway 26 cleared to land. The tower cannot track you down to the runway, no, it's up to the pilots to define their profile based on the conditions they have. Well, there is the type of the approach where tower may guide you to the minimum descent altitude, but it's called a precision approach radar, PAR, and it wasn't used in this case. I guess it even doesn't exist for Grozny. Right, next the tower reported that the runway lights are switched on, but later on crew found itself in unstable approach, so they announced go around non-stabilized approach. Again, as I've told you, it's very hard to approach it without GPS. From the internal communication, it's been confirmed that they've lost LNAV heading. Then the tower report go around is published. It means that the crew should follow the standard go around procedure, all of the route with altitudes. And then crew requested vectoring for go round because they lost GPS. They told about it again. So if you have this go round is published, by the time you start the go around and you switch on the lateral navigation mode in your automatic flight control system, the airplane just follows the route and you need just to set the altitude, monitor the speed and retract the flaps gear upon go around. But without GPS, the airplane wouldn't follow that profile. You have to do everything manually, or I would call it half manually. You can switch autopilot on and fly the airplane using a heading knob, but here you don't have really a track on your navigation display. With navigation data lost, you lose it. A little later, Grozny Tower told the crew to continue the present heading and climb height 900 meters. And 1 minute later, the tower asked the crew about their present heading. It seems that the ATC didn't have the mark for the airplane heading on their display. It seems like the crew didn't respond on that, but they asked for vectoring for another hand approach. And they report that they are turn right heading 080. A little later, Grozny asked if they need AirNav GNSS approach. Confirm you need AirNav GNSS approach. Yeah, it really shows the incompetence of the air traffic controller. Air crew reported many of the times that they've lost GPS. We've lost 2 of the GPS, we've lost GPS, but the air traffic controller sent the airplane to fly as published, understanding that it's difficult to fly as published with just needles. Also, AirNav GNSS approach is based on the satellite data, but you don't have satellites. Crew report about it many of the times. The crew responded on that, confirm we need no GNSS approach, lost both GPS, so again, no GPS, ATC, where are you? But it seems like the Grozny Tower doesn't understand a thing. Expect AirNav GNSS approach runway 26, they say. And pilots again said, no, we lost both GPS, we cannot perform enough approach. Request vectoring for NDB, Victor approach, Azerbaijan 8243. Like how many times they requested vectoring and still there is no assistance from the tower. Then the tower responded, Azerbaijan, Roger, expect NDB Victor approach runway 26. Maintain height 900 meters. The crew here, please advise how long will maintain present heading. Then after 1 minute and 17 seconds, for your information, radio contact lost. Continue present heading report your distance. So the tower asked the aircrew to report the distance, but the aircrew has navigation problems. And it seems like the tower too, they lost radio contact, so they do not see the airplane on their display. Crew reporter present heading 080, distance from airport 30 miles but lost GPS. This information may be inaccurate. Like the crew reported what they have from the inertial reference system, which lost the update without GPS, without DME as well. And then the situation escalated, everyone understood that, and then they changed to the Russian language. So here I'll have to translate it for you. It's the usual thing before I've flown to Moscow many of the times. Usually we did communication in English, but if something unusual happens, we switch to Russian to understand each other more precisely. Here, by the way, the transition to the Russian language was done by the crew. They called the tower, and here ATC confirmed, so I confirm, я подтверждаю, that now see you, I don't see you on dispatch radar. Basically, you're absent on the screen. Why it happened? Well, because Russian military applied their own interference to jam GPS signal in the area, and maybe some extra electronic warfare to jam radio signals. Crew here, our heading is 80 degrees and our altitude is 900 meters. Azerbaijan, I understand you perform left orbit, so climb 1500 meters, but here his voice is mumbling. The crew didn't understand that and they required a special heading for them to maintain. What heading should I maintain? And 5 seconds after, Grozny tower tells about the meteo information in the airport. That the visibility is 1300 meters with a cloud base of 240 meters. Broom. And the aircrew again asked for vectoring. They are now at the heading of 180 degrees. The tower told them to maintain the present heading. Despite the problems with GPS signal, aircrew decided to continue approach for one more try. Pilot here tells that we are going to make an approach, so I'm asking you because we need to extend the gear and flaps. Should we get ready for approach? Do you read me? Grozny tower reported that they've understood. Then it seems like the tower saw the airplane on the ATC screen because they reported azimuth 072 degrees and the distance 26 kilometers. Then tower said descend 600 meters. Under your own navigation, descend to 500 meters. Pilots report that they've reached 500 meters and please check our distance and tell us then to descend further. So it's very tricky approach without the distance known to the airfield. It's very hard. Then the tower says that according to his data, the altitude of the airplane is just 300 meters. But the aircrew say that they have 500 meters on their altimeters. And here I guess we should wait for the final investigation report to check out what pressure was set on altimeters. Then the tower says that the distance is 12 kilometers, you are approaching glide slope, wind calm, runway 26, clear to land, runway lights on. And then pilots decided to discontinue the approach because the weather again was marginal, some of the navigation problems. They say that they're going to Baku. And tower say that climb straight ahead with the present heading altitude 900 meters. A little later, tower said initially climb level 080, so flight level is relative to the pressure 1013 or 2992 inches of mercury. Also, air traffic controller asked them if they can go to the point Pinta, but it's the GPS point. And again, I guess it's already for the 6th time or something like that. Aircrew report that all of the GPS are lost. We need vectoring. Tower says that I understand you, turn right, heading 360. And less than a minute later, according to the data from the flight data record, the airplane was climbing, crossing the altitude of 3,500 feet relative to the sea level according to the QNH pressure of the airfield Grozny. It's kind of strange because the pressure could be sent to Kyiv, however, if you fly the Western-made aircraft, maybe you have different procedure. Or maybe QNH was sent by mistake, but it wasn't crucial in this case. Maybe it explains the discrepancy between what the air traffic controller saw on his radar. He said 300 meters you have, but crew reported that they maintained 500 meters. But in general, it is not related to this disaster. So they marked this time saying that everything was working well, the autopilot was engaged, auto throttle engaged, but both of the GPS receivers didn't accept any kind of the signal from the satellites. What is also important that DME, the distance measuring equipment, was also out of use for this aircraft. There was no signal from DME, and that's why IRS system wasn't able to update the aircraft position. The pressure in all of the hydraulic systems were fine. And here's the picture of the aircraft at that precise second, so you can see a little bank angle because the airplane was maneuvering around, both of the engines were fine, hydraulic pressure everywhere. But just a second later, according to the cockpit voice recording, there was a loud bang heard. And immediately autopilot and auto throttle disengaged, the oral warning was heard. 3 seconds later, the pressure in the third hydraulic system went to 0. The fluid level in the same hydraulic system also went to 0%. The position of elevator, aileron and rudder are fixed in the neutral position and remained there till the rest of the flight. 2 seconds later, a failure of the electrical pitch trim of the airplane. That's the warning they have: AP pitch trim not engaged, mag trim not capable. It is very critical because there was no even electrical trim to manipulate the airplane stabilizer, which might help to land this airplane safely. So what is left are just 2 engines. And also electrical flaps extension and landing gear alternate extension, emergency extension. But to control the airplane, it's basically not enough, and how they've flown the airplane in that state for such a long period of time is just a miracle. Later on, captain announced that service door aft open indication, and definitely the door at the aft part opened because missile hit it. Tower didn't know what happened, so they called the airplane to climb flight level 150. They've also told expedite the climb. Crew responded, okay, expediting, but I think it was like machinery response, because they started to lose all of the hydraulic systems. Hydraulic 2 low pressure, pressure in the first hydraulic system 0. Hydraulic fluid level in the first system went to 0. Also in this graph you can see that all of the hydraulic systems went to 0 marking. The pressure of the second hydraulic system went down to 4 psi, but 4 psi is absolutely not enough to manipulate the airplane. The usual pressure is 3100, so 4 and 3100, it's completely different volume. Here you can see the position of the airplane and the hydraulic system indication, so 040, all of the needles went down, but the engines were working fine. Again guys, it's the draft preliminary information that was created by the investigation team. Later on we'll see final report with maybe more information, but here it's 100% legit. At 051656 there was the second explosion heard on a cockpit voice recorder, so probably a second missile. After 1 minute, captain called the cabin crew to find out what happened to clarify the situation, and he called, "Hello, what happened?" The flight attendant reported that it was the explosion. 2 seats. I cannot approach because passengers just stood up and I tried to put them back to their seats. And here we see where Russia took their version about the bird strike, because captain later on he didn't know what is happening there, and he reported what he might think in this case. It was the external impact towards the airplane. So what could strike the airplane? Well, probably it was a bird strike. Let's report to the tower. Grozny, we have the failure of the flight control system, bird strike in the cabin. Bird strike and 2 seats in the cabin compartment exploded. It even sounds illogical, but by the time the crew was fighting for their lives trying to control the airplane which lost the flight controls. The crew is sitting on the front, there is no external cameras to show you the airplane condition like in the flight simulator we have the external camera view. No, it's not working like that. Moreover, at that time they just don't know what is happening. They need the assistance from the air traffic controller. That's why they told about the possible bird strike. In his worst nightmare, captain would think about the Russian military striking his airplane. Then the tower told, okay, we understood you, what support you need, what help you need. The flight crew say that they need the nearest possible airport where the weather is normal. we're gonna go and let. It's the intercom between the captain and first officer. And here's the long ATC communication about the possible weather in Minvodi airfield. Next, the pilots reported about the huge impact on the airplane and the aft seats exploded, according to the flight attendants. We are going to Mineralny Vody, give us weather information. So there was the speculation, unfortunately, also from the pro-Ukrainian channels and Ukrainian media and the Western media as well, that Russia banned the airplane to land in its airfields. In fact, no, and we can clearly see it from the air traffic control communication. I've told it from the very beginning that it's not possible to forbid the airplane to land. If it is an emergency, pilot makes that decision to land in particular airport or not. Depends on weather and other factors. And finally, it was the pilot's decision to go to Aktau, Kazakhstan. And as for me, it was the best decision which they could take. I've told about it from the very beginning, so don't listen to propaganda media from any of the side. And here I don't really understand what is happening with air traffic control communication. So the tower asks if the airplane is okay, bord порядок, so if the airplane is fine, and crew reported, yes, it's fine, we're going to Minvod, so the Russian airfield in Kavkazsky Mineralny Vody. But probably the crew was very busy fighting to control the air, that's why they respond just machinery to the air traffic controller. Okay, everything is good, like we fly, we go to Minvody, that's their main goal. It's like a tunnel vision, especially when you encounter this emergency. Later on, there was the warning cabin altitude high because the airplane was depressurized. There were many of the holes in it. By the time the airplane was maintaining flight level 150, pilots report that they are unable to maintain 150. We have excessive pressure. Повышенное давление, it's the excessive pressure indeed, so maybe not the excessive one, but the lower pressure. But again, guys, then you are in this situation, then you fight for your life, like with just 2 of the engines remaining. You may say different stuff, but air traffic controller understood that. Then the tower told the airplane to turn left, heading 360. Pilots report that the airplane is losing the control. Well, actually, without hydraulics, it's already lost the control. And then the tower gave the information for Mineralny Vody. The visibility was more than 10 kilometers, so it's good, but the clouds were overcast with a base of just 180 meters. In this condition, it is absolutely no-go. It's very close to the ground. That's why Minvody was not suitable alternative. Later on, pilots reported that they have no hydraulics, so we have hydraulic system failure. Tower asked if the airplane can maintain a special heading. Pilots say that give us the heading and we'll try to go to Makhachkala. And immediately Tower gave the weather information for Makhachkala. The visibility is 3,300 meters. The cloud base is 700 meters broom, so the weather was also marginal out there. And again, guys, they have no GPS, they have no hydraulics, they have no electrical trim to control a stabilizer. The tower asked if they have an emergency. Pilots report, I don't understand. Then Grozny Tower said if the aircraft is fine, and pilots miraculously say that the airplane is fine, then they have no hydraulics. They reported about it before, but again, they're under the huge stress. We don't fly like that even on simulator, then you have total failure of hydraulic, including electrical trim. Guys, for every pilot, it's a nightmare, and I don't know how I would behave in this situation. Then they changed the airplane for Rostov control. After pilots received the information about the marginal weather conditions in Makhachkala in Minvody, they've decided to go to Baku. They request to maintain the current altitude, please vector us. And then Rostov control asked lots of the stuff. Somehow it didn't have the information about the airplane heading, and it basically asked too many questions from the airplane by the time Rostov control should give the proper information to pilots for vectoring. And later on, Rostov control even insisted a little for the airplane to make a decision to land in Makhachkala. He told recommendation southwest from you 160 kilometers there is Makhachkala. Technically it's okay, your decision. but we know that the visibility there is 3,300 meters, and with the failure they have, it's a bad weather. Also, the cloud base is not very high. Then pilots asked the information about the weather in Baku. It's the origin of this flight, so it was the flight from Baku to Grozny, so they were coming back, the fuel was enough. In Baku it was a little windy, the wind speed was 14 knots. The visibility was nice, more than 10 kilometers, the clouds were overcast, however, at 960 meters, ATC told. Then pilots again requested the weather in Makhachkala just to cross-check. And in Makhachkala the clouds were broken at 180 meters. Visibility 4,800 meters, which is even worse than in Baku. That's why the crew said, no, we are going to Baku. Later on, Rostov Control asked about the bird strike and what engines were hit. The crew reported that the engines are working fine, but they've lost the flight controls. And then pilots requested the weather information in Aktau, Kazakhstan. So since the pilots were experienced, they knew the region of their flight because, you know, Baku is not far away. So the usual alternates for Baku are well known, and Aktau is one of those alternates. And the weather in Aktau was more than 10 kilometers, the cloud base was more than 1,000 meters, and the wind speed was 6 meters per second, which is more or less okay. Pilots quickly analyzed that, okay Rostov, we're going to Aktau in this case, so the decision to go to Aktau was taken by the crew. No one sent the airplane directly to the Caspian Sea to hide the evidence, no. As I've told you in my previous videos about this particular case, actually it was more profitable for Russia for the airplane to land somewhere in the Russian airfield, because in that case the Russian Federation would be in charge of the investigation committee. But now it's Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan and also Brazil. So in a way, Russia doesn't have the influence on investigation. After it, they ask about how many persons they have on board and what particular help they need upon arrival. After all, pilots decided to figure out what happened actually to the airplane. They also reported about the possible explosion of the oxygen bottle. And that's the other version which you might heard from the Russian media. Firstly, they reported about the bird strike, and secondary about the oxygen cylinder. But later on you'll see more images showing that it's definitely the air defense missile of the Russian army. Well, pilots reported about their possible version that probably it's the oxygen bottle which exploded, and air traffic controller copied that. And later on pilots went to Aktau Tower, it's the Kazakhstan air traffic control. And here they said already, Mayday, 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 Azerbaijan, Aktau Vishka, good day, we have loss of the flight controls. We control the airplane just with the help of the engines. We request an emergency landing on runway 11. Aktau Tower said that they received the information, squawk and so on, continue to descend to 1,800 feet. And also they gave the local QNH, because in Kazakhstan you fly normally according to QNH. And probably it's better for you to approach visually, yes? Corresponded the descent to 1,800 feet, but still it was like reference altitude, because it was almost impossible to maintain that altitude with just engines. Pilots say that we're gonna try a visual approach. And again, pilot mentioned that they control the airplane just with throttle. Later on, Aktau Tower told that if it's better for them to be vectored for approach, pilots responded, yes, please give us some vectoring. After it, it was the signal terrain, pull up. And by the way, by the time GPS signal was restored and navigation system was working fine. Later on, crew started to configure the airplane for landing, flaps 1, flaps 2, flaps 3, many of the terrain pull-up warnings, because the airplane was flying very close to the ground, up and down. It was really hard to control it with a thrust only, especially when you change the flap settings. Usually you help with electrical trim, but here the trim wasn't working, so the airplane was unbalanced. And at 6 hours 27 minutes 58 seconds, airplane collided with the ground. The bank angle by the time of the collision was 35 degrees, pitch almost -6 degrees. Flaps and slats extended, flaps position 3, landing gear extended, stabilizer was set 1.76 up, but again crew wasn't able to control this volume. 3 of the crew members, 35 of the passengers lost their lives. Luckily, some of the passengers survived as well as 2 of the crew members. Cockpit of the airplane, which hit the ground at first. You can see that even the headset left there. It is the overhead panel and it is the canopy itself. The engines were working fine till the end, till the impact, and the aft part of the airplane where passengers survived this tragic crash. And here you can see new images of the foreign objects. Yes, investigation team already said about the foreign objects which hit the airplane from outside. So it's not the bird, as you can see, it's not an oxygen cylinder, it's the Russian air defense Panzer 1S. And according to this report, I understand that there were 2 of the missiles which hit the airplane, because there were 2 loud bangs recorded on the cockpit voice recorder. And here are the hydraulic lines of the airplane. This is the hydraulic system 1. You can see this tube where the hydraulic leak happened and where the system was depressurized. A hydraulic system 3. Again, a hole there, and this is the reservoir of the hydraulic system 3 which was damaged, and it is the hole which led to the leak of the hydraulic fluid. The power cables were cut which led to the stabilizer trim actuator. You can see it over here. Before I thought the different image showing this cut, but actually the other motor here was also cut. You can see the damage to the wiring. Сквозные повреждения воздушного судна указывают на проникновение внешних объектов в конструкцию воздушного судна. The damages of the airplane show the external impact of the foreign objects into the construction of the airplane. The majority of the damages were done to the vertical and horizontal stabilizer and the aft section of the airplane. Those are the elements of the Panzer 1S missile which went into the airplane. And here's how they even find the hole which fits exactly the shape of this shrapnel. About the flight crew, we have the information that captain was 62 years old. He was flying many of the airplanes throughout his career: Antonov 2, Yakovlev 40, Tupolev 136, Antonov 140, ATR 4272, by the way, I've flown that stuff as well, and Embraer 170, 190. Totally he got 15,139 flight hours. And half of them at least he was a captain. A first officer was 29 years old. He graduated at first in 2015 from Baku Academy, Flight Academy, but I know that later he went to Ukraine. Well, at least according to our information, he was also studying in Ukraine 3 years ago. And based on his flight time, just 828 hours, he was not actually flying since 2015. It's basically not enough time for the pilot for many years. So I guess that he was flying not more than 3 years, but my friends, those are just details. So he flown Cessna, and on Embraer he had 670 flight hours. A very young pilot with not much experience, but I'm sure he performed well in this case, because this is outstanding case, guys. As I've told you, we are not trained to deal with this failure. Then your aircraft is just been hit by a missile and you lose hydraulic and basically fly airplane using the only possible way to manipulate the thrust. The airplane itself was made in 2013 and I am sure that it was working fine. Azerbaijan has a good maintenance in their facilities. Even the airplanes from the other airlines are coming for the maintenance in Azerbaijan. So even though it's not like very new airplane, but I'm sure it was well maintained and in good service condition. Here we have more detailed information about the weather in different airfields, but you already know it from the ATC communication which I translated for you. Here's the runway 26. NDB approach was only presented for this runway. ILS is not working there, and without GPS it was very hard to perform any sort of the approach towards the runway. That's why the airplane did 2 of the go-rounds. Here's the drone image from the crash site. Luckily the aft part of the airplane separated and there were many of the survivors. Well, there is also other information which is not that relative to us, just some definitions, spelling and so on. The outcome recommendation for this preliminary report is for the aviation authorities and for airlines is to go through the risk management to analyze the flights to the regions where there is the loss of the GPS signal. Kind of the strange outcome initially from the investigation bureau. They didn't say about the missile, even though we see the evidence, but probably initially because of the political reason they didn't put it. Under this video I'll put the brief analysis of this report from the Azer tag. It's in English, so for you it will be easy to read just the brief information about what is listed there. And also I'll put the original link for this PDF file from the Kazakhstan officials. But from the legacy media like Reuters, we already have the report that it was definitely Panzer S system of the Russian air defense. Reuters write about it in the reference to the government source of Azerbaijan. It was hit by the Russian Panzer S air defense system, and Azerbaijani government source told Reuters today on Tuesday. So there are no any doubts that Russia shot down this airplane. Guys, it is a huge tragedy for Azerbaijan, but also for our commercial aviation community. The country management, like in Russia, they don't have brains. They just shut down the civilian airplane. As simple as that. They've shut down the airplane and just in a few minutes announced the cover plan. The cover plan is that they restrict the airspace because of the drone strike. There was no coordination between the military actions of the Russian army and the air traffic communication. The airspace was open for commercial traffic, and the Russian air defense operators hit the airplane with their missiles. Russia still remains silent. They didn't recognize what they've done. Even with everything provided with this evidence, they continue to play fools. And I have a very short message for those who support Russia in this case. Here you go. For me, I know it personally because Iran shut down our airplane in Tehran. Well, at least miraculously, Iran on the third day said that they've done it. But Russia, no, it keeps silent. Well, I just hope that Ilham Aliyev and Azerbaijani government will continue to pressure a Russian side for them to say openly that they are guilty for this tragedy. They should apologize for Azerbaijan. They should prosecute those who were responsible for it. And they should pay compensations for the relatives and for the airline. Yes, with compensations you cannot return people from afterlife. No, it's not possible. But at least they should recognize that they're guilty and do everything possible for those cases not to happen again. Because we know it's not the first time that Russia shuts down commercial airliner. My friends, usually YouTube demonetizes those kind of the videos, so if you want to support the job, I'll put the link for my Patreon right in the video description below. Just if you want and if you can, you may support me over there. As always, my friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.